Hola, hola. Well, good morning. Welcome, everybody, to the Open Forum of Feminist Digital Economy. Thank you for coming, to all of you here, and also all of you that are watching this video and streaming. This session is being recorded, so it will be available on the net, and hopefully we'll have long life after these 3 days. The title of this of this session is Feminist Digital Economy, and please let me know that the original title of the session had a question mark. But soon we realized that there's no question about it, that we need a feminist economy because if we want to achieve a more sustainable and inclusive models of cities, that requires a change of perspective and a transformation of our economic system. And in this matter, feminist economics question the individualism and also the competitiveness of the current neoliberal economical system. And in fact, this session is a starting point in a debate that we want to create between the feminist economics and the sharing economy. And we have initiated this research at the Dimmons Institute, Research Institute, and we want also in this during this time to create some kind of dialogue, and maybe, of course, take note of everything that you can add. Please, I would like to introduce my colleagues in this panel, Mayo, Fuster, and Sonia, Ruiz. I think Mayo doesn't need too much presentation. She's the director of Dimmons, and she has been working for more than 20 years researching and promoting the commons-oriented platform economy. And Sonia Ruiz, she's a doctor in political science, and she's the director of the gender mainstreaming department of Barcelona City Council. And myself, Mónica Grau, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Dimmons. I have an interdisciplinary background in social science and humanity, from social psychology to organizational behavior and feminist economics. And my interest in research is to study the patriarchal and capital ideology underlying the hegemonic business model, and how we can propose alternatives from feminism. The structure of the session is the following. I'm going to talk a little bit about feminist economics, and then Mayo will talk us about some feminist dimensions in the sharing economy. And Sonia will talk about public policies to promote economic feminist transformation. Okay. Maybe I should... Regarding the feminist economics, I would like to share with you a really kind of short presentation, because obviously there is not too much time. And I'm aware that maybe some of you are not familiar with what is feminist economic. You may think that has something to do with women, and yes, you're right, has something to do with women, and has gender as a central category of analysis. But what feminist economics is looking for is a really ambitious goal. It's a transformation the way we understand and we do economy. And yes, and now I have this picture. This picture, you can see here some people in front of the computers, with numbers, with values, talking about buying, selling, exchange, profit, etc., etc. And this is a picture that can be in any book of economy, and probably any student will find nothing strange in the picture, because it's an economical activity, and this is the way how economics is like. However, if we show this other picture, Some of these students will wonder what this has to do with economy. Here we can see a woman, probably from an African country, taking care of 3 kids, cycling the bicycle with some wood, probably for doing fire, cooking or sharing, maybe some water on his head. And I think, in my opinion, in my concern, there are many economical activities here, but you wouldn't find this picture in a regular book of economy. And this is Adam Smith. He's the father of the modern science of economics. When he wrote The Wealth of Nations, he asked a fundamental question. And the question was, what makes that I have my dinner on the table? What makes that everything during all this economical process is integrated, that fits all together? How is possible that I could have finally the dinner on my table? And to summarize a lot, obviously, as a conclusion, he thought that what keeps everything all together is the self-interest of everyone, the self-interest of any economic agent. All these people are looking for their best interest, and then they are looking for their profit. So that's what makes that finally he had the dinner on the table. But the thing is that Adam Smith never got married, but he always lived with his mom. And probably it was the mom who cooked the dinner every night so he could have the dinner on the table. And he didn't have to bother too much about unpaid and domestic stuff. And he just could focus on something important and to define what the economy is. So the thing is, what I want to say is that women and women's work are not visible and are not recognized for the economic theory and practice. And this is a fact. And yes, this has to do with feminist economics, of course. But feminist economics is, as I said, is a transformation. And it's important to improve the situation of women in the labor market. But it's not only about that. It's in the agenda, but it's not only about that. And feminist economics is not only about to, once the women are in the labor market, to ensure equal working conditions, because until now, the women holds the most precarious working condition and the lowest wage. And when we talk about gender inequality, there's a global consensus. A gender gap exists in any country, for any sector, and for any job. But feminist economics is not only about that. And it's not only about to recognize the unpaid work deployed at the households, primarily by women, doing activities as shopping, food, clothes, cooking, cleaning, maintaining the house, paying bills, doing administrative tasks, taking care of children, taking care of family members who are sick or elderly people, and so on and so on. And yes, there are activities that men also do, of course. But the difference is that women do it 2 or 3 times more than men. And that has an incredible impact in women's life and in women's decision. And these are the kind of activities, these activities are fundamental, because these activities extend income as a monetary value, as a standard as well-being. And as we know, nobody can live just with money in their pocket, right? So feminist economics is not only about it. It's not only about to recognize the reproduction work that mostly women do, especially within a system that is focused on production, on growth, on accumulation of capital, and pays not too much attention, or is not to worry about the vulnerability or fragility of life, of peoples and environment. Feminist economics is a school of thought, and it's a political action that, as I say, is looking for transformation and is creating a new model of economy, and it's with new concepts, with new analytical frameworks, and with new methodologies. And it's also a theoretical, ethical, and practical framework for social transformation and for the construction of an economy that functions on the basis of justice and equality. The thing is that by doing so, feminist economics is questioning some of the most basic assumptions of the neoclassical theory. Things like, for example, how the individualist understanding of the social relations, the logic of self-interest, in contrast with, for example, collaboration or cooperation between people, or also the artificial creation of this autonomous ambit in which economic relations are separated from social relation or for nature, or the creation also this economic agent called homus economicus, an individual that is self-selfish and is sufficient and is competitive and is rational, take decision from the rational point of view, and an agent that maybe doesn't represent to everybody. And also is criticizing the imposition of growth as a final objective, as a universal principle for understanding the evolution. Again, this is another picture. Feminist economics is about tell us that economy is not an objective science. There are ideologies underlying for making decisions and for developing ideas and knowledge. And in economy, there are processes of inclusion and exclusion. And we know, the women, women issues know about the process of exclusion, obviously. This picture is from the first Spanish government in 1979, but there is no need to go so far. We can go like something like last week, and here we have the Governing Council of the European Central Bank. They had a meeting. The difference is that here we have the president of the European Central Bank, that is Christine Lagarde. And this is interesting because we can see that even if a woman is participating in the public space, doesn't mean that inclusion or diversity is guaranteed. Sorry. I want to follow what I have. Yeah, what I wanted, there are two main concepts very important for feminist economics theory, and is the process, the inclusion, participation, and sustainability of life. And they are also important for the sharing economy. That's why I want to highlight these ideas of inclusion and the need for sustainability of life. The idea underlying these two pictures is that we cannot achieve inclusion if there is no representation of different people. That seems quite obvious, but it's something that we have to claim, because in the sense that similar people and have similar experience, probably they have similar problems and needs and so on and so on. So it's quite difficult to think that do they have the sensibility to understand the reality of different people. Probably it's more complicated. Only when we challenge inclusion with participation with more people, we can create a broader knowledge. And in fact, for example, I think we will achieve inclusion, real inclusion, when we see something like this picture and we see a Spanish Minister of Defense in front of the troops. And the fact that she's 7 months pregnant is something secondary and is not extraordinary. because there is a performativity of gender. There is a performativity of gender in the public space, but also in the economical space. And it's something we had to remain the feminist slogan from the 70s, that the personal is political, but also the personal is economical. And I want to, because we have obviously, there's no much time, and I just want to give you some example. For example, practical implication of feminist economics in macroeconomy, for example. There are works from the feminist economics about how to improve the way we measure the health the health of a nation's economy with the GDP. We question if the GDP includes all type of work, and also if the GDP is the best indicator to track the health of a nation's economy. There are alternatives to include to the GDP, like for example, what about if we use well-being indicators based on the capability approach developed by Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. We have this Human Development Index that measure what people is able to do according to the laws and social norms and resources that they have in their country. Are they free enough to make the decision that they want to do, able to have the life that they want to have? So this Human Development Indicator, we enlarge the measure of the GDP. But also, what about if we include the measure of the care economy, the unpaid work that the household are doing for the quality of life of these people? And there are many, many works for trying to measure this care economy. Like I put an example of this one from Mexico, using time user surveys. We calculate, we have an estimation how much time people spend doing this unpaid work. And in the case of Mexico, the value was the 20% of the GDP, and that's more amount it's more amount than the Mexican oil export, or even the money that the millions of Mexicans have that have emigrated to the world remit to their countries. And of course, they are difficult to measure activities that are not in the market, but we have the experience that we actually are doing. For example, in Europe, countries are forced to measure, or at least to find an estimation of the value of prostitution and drugs. And they create like satellite accounts to the GDP. So the question here is that if we measure prostitution and drugs, why we don't measure care economy? There is perhaps the answer is the ideology behind, no? And just to close this presentation, let me tell you that feminist economics is not just for crazy people, women thinking about to transform the economy. No, there's an international congress, there are academic papers, national congress, chairs at university, and more, the knowledge is beyond the academia, beyond the university, and we can read on mainstream papers and find places like Sharing City, where we try to interconnect the disciplines. And I have to finish because it was a little bit more tense. So now I give the word to Sonia. Yeah, we changed the term, perfect. So now it's time to Sonia Ruiz for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? More or less, yeah. Good morning. Thank you very much to Dimmons from the Open University of Catalonia to give us the floor and the opportunity to explain our small contribution to the feminist economy. I am very pleased to be here with Monica, and especially also with Mayo, one of the world experts on digital economy. I'm very proud of you. The feminist economy exists, as Monica was pointing out, and sometimes it can also be developed from the institutions, in the institutions. Monica, she was talking about one of the fathers of liberalism, Smith, and I would like to talk, to bring here to the floor Mike Ferlou, who is one of the mothers of the gender mainstreaming definition, one of the most famous one. Maybe not, I'm not sure if everybody here knows what gender mainstreaming means. And Mike Ferlou pointed out that it is the reorganization, improvement, development, and evaluation of policy processes so that a gender equality perspective is incorporated in all policies, at all levels, and at all stages by the actors normally involved in the policy making. And Mike Ferlou also said that this strategy, the gender mainstreaming strategy, that we are applying, that we are developing in the Barcelona City Council. It's a technical tool, but in addition, it requires political will at the highest level, if possible. Well, you know that we're very proud to have a general manager right now who is a feminist and also a major who is a feminist. So this is a requirement. If this requirement is met, then it leads to a feminist revolution in the heart of the organization that is implementing the gender mainstreaming. And so I'm going to focus on two main points of the Barcelona City Council's basic gender mainstreaming strategy in relation to economy. That is, on the one hand, on the economic tools and the mechanisms that we are putting in place in the machinery, that is the economic machinery of the City Council itself. And on the other hand, I would like to speak a bit, it's not going to be, I hope it's not going to be more than 10 minutes, on the integration of these gender goals in the economic policies that we carry out for the public, for the citizenship. So in relation to this first point, the organization, the operation, the machinery of the economic gender mainstreaming in the City Council. Any gender mainstreaming implementation requires institutional change. And you know, many of you better than me, that change is usually, it doesn't happen easily, but it can happen. So we do know that feminist actions increase democracy. And when democracy is increased, it also contributes to good government if something is happening in a political environment. So therefore, the do's and the don'ts of internal gender mainstreaming must include the involvement of feminist organizations, of women in all their diversity, and this is a must for us. Gender mainstreaming must take into account the needs and the demands of all women, as well as of all other invisible and marginalized groups. This means that all feminist economic policies must be imbued with an intersectional perspective. This necessary participation will also be organized in a digital form through the CD in Barcelona, and Arnau is here, no, maybe they can speak how we will manage that. It is, as you know, the open collaborative digital participation platform that we also want to give it as a tool for our Women's Council and the other women's councils in the districts of the city. And we think that this will also promote space for action and exchange, and it will contribute to the feminist transformation of our city. The public authorities are responsible for redistributing wealth. And the Barcelona City Council does this from a feminist perspective, or we're working on that. That means, as Monica said, to putting the lives of everybody, of all people, at the center of the decision-making procedures, in harmony with the environment. And this is the sustainability of life, working for that, working in that direction. So for contributing to that, or in aims of that, we analyze the gender impact of our budget in order to establish whether the policies that we're carrying out increase, maintain, or decrease. That means if they help to reduce gender inequalities. And this assessment enables us to keep or to redirect the policies, the political decisions for the benefit of those who most need it in each area. So we are analyzing culture, the budget on culture, health, public transport, employment, all the areas in an increased way. Macroeconomic policies must also be feminist, as we just seen, and as many of our colleagues have also pointed out, Castro, Pazos, Jubeto, these academic remind us that the local governments must first find out who pays what taxes or rates, and then we will be able to take the next step, which is to adjust taxation. This is linked for me to the long shadow of the things that we are not that are not seen, that are invisible, and this invisibility is like following us everywhere. But we're working to combat that. We're struggling on that. So getting this data will enable us to review the property and the real estate tax, the terrace tax, all the taxes, all the local taxes. And for instance, we will be also able to continue to integrate public prices so that single mothers, so that single mother families, which are the 80% of the single parent family in our city, and who are the ones that suffer the most from poverty and from unstable situation, so that these women, these families can go to municipal sports centers and enjoy for some time for themselves, to take care of themselves. All this work is based on close collaboration with our colleagues from the economic area and the tax office, for instance, among them. So the framework of possibilities for a feminist-based distribution includes also taking into account the criterion in gender subsidies given to entities, enterprises, and anyone who is applying for funding for projects to the City Council of Barcelona. And finally, also public procurement. I'm a very fan of public procurement related for being a tool of transformation. It can be a very powerful economic tool. Just think that the City Council of Barcelona awards around 600 million euros in goods and services every year. So in addition, it is the city's largest contracting body, and it is responsible for promoting decent, high-quality service and employment free from gender discriminations and gender inequalities. In this sense, the gender clauses that we have are mandatory in all the contracts, and I'm talking about gender clauses as equality. We require the enterprises to have equality plans, measures against sexual harassment, the promotion of women in the job market, parity representation, inclusive, that they make a use of inclusive communication, or joint responsibility for work-life balance. Besides, we are also monitoring high gender sensitive and also relevant economic contracts, such as the remote care contract or the home health care contract and the street cleaning contract. To finish, and I want to highlight some rough outlines of feminist digital economic policies that are designed and carried out by the City Council in the area of employment, participation, entrepreneurship, and business. Many of you, and all of you know better than me, that Barcelona has become one of the Europe's leading cities in the technological ecosystem, as it has around 60,000 people employed in these activities. In spite of this, only 34% of these people working in the field of ICTs are women. In Catalonia, in higher education, in mathematics, for example, the percentage of women has fallen by up to 25 points in recent years. It's incredible, it's terrible data. And in mechanical engineering, or computer science, for example, the number of women is under 1%. This is why it is essential and urgent to provide role models and fight against gender stereotypes in the digital economy and related to STEM studies and all this field. The Barcelona City Council, through its employment office, Barcelona Activa, has a digital economy line that meets the need for lifelong learning with different programs, from going to the libraries and introductory courses to awareness-raising courses, skills acquisition, and specialization, based always on the users and their goals. Several digital economy projects with a gender perspective or led by women have been promoted through these programs. For example, Urban Manzana, which is a startup created in the incubators from Barcelona Activa, led by a woman. Desnúdate, which is a digital project on body self-esteem created by two women who met and they got together in the Lidera, which is a women's entrepreneur support and training program of Barcelona Activa. And we do have many other nice examples and powerful examples, and also policies that we have been promoting in the field of digital economy. For example, 2 years ago, we did a study in order to get to know how the ICT ecosystem was in our city, and there we got to know that, for example, just 1% of the women's and feminist organizations in our city in the field of ICT. We've made also women's and gender perspective theme hackathons, launched, or we have also given them support, such one who has been dealing and creating an APP for domestic workers, and also an index. We have been also working on an index on poverty and precariousness among women in Barcelona with the Open Data Initiative that you have over there. So other projects like supporting the Wiki Donas project from La Bonne Maison, which is a women's organization in Barcelona, and many other initiatives which I can tell you more about if you're interested. And all of this, just let me tell you to finish that all of this is being carried out having a parity representation between women and men in the management positions of the City Council in Barcelona for the first time, and we are very proud to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia and Monica, for the presentations. Welcome, everybody, particularly the baby, actually. Welcome to the baby. It's really something to celebrate that it's here, because in the last Mobile World Congress, it was an incident that a mother with a baby went into the Congress and didn't allow them to get in. So we are seeing progress with this participation. I am Mayo Fuster. I am the director of Dimmons, which is co-organizer together with the Barcelona City Council of the Sharing City program, and this stand is part of it. My presentation is going to be about thinking about feminist digital economy. First, I'm going to introduce platform economy and the digital economy, and then I will go into questioning from a feminist perspective. So, platform or collaborative economy refers to a mode of production that is increasing in importance, referring to consumption, exchange, and production of any kind of goods and services between a distributed community of people supported by digital platforms. This element that the production is being supported by digital platform is becoming each time more important, and is being spread to almost all sectors of economical activity. So we have to think about that in last century, the fabric become the main space of production, the fabric as a space where it was organized, how production was done. This is being transitioned into platforms. So digital platforms is not just like a sector, but it's actually the main space of production in the emerging economical system that is being transformed by the new technologies. But it can have many kind of modalities. The type of digital platforms, like something like Wikipedia, is very different than something that Airbnb or Uber. And still, we have been seeing, as I say, like the expansion of this, of the disruption of the platforms becoming the central space of production in many industries: the software industry, the cinema, the music industry, scientific production. More recently, tourism, vacational rental, with the case of Airbnb, or taxi services with Cadify or Uber, no? Depending on the sectors we see, and depending on the industry, we see that it prevails more and more democratic models of platform production or a more extractionist kind of model. But don't think about that alternative modalities of digital platforms are some kind of minoritarian. There are certain industries in which there are the predominant, like for example in the software industry or in the encyclopedia industry, that it has disrupted in order to actually transform it into a more democratic modality of creating encyclopedias. We have been working in defining the set of dimensions that actually allow us to differentiate between digital platforms, because as I had said, something like Uber or Airbnb are digital platforms, but something like Wikipedia or Some Mobilidad, which is a platform around mobility services, are also digital platforms, but they are very different. And the kind of dimensions that we have to consider in order to differentiate them, we have been defining them in this start of democratic qualities of digital platforms that allow us to differentiate between the commons model and the platform cooperativist models that are mainly cooperative, like the kind of new cooperatives of this century, from the unicorns or the extractionist model. So these models like Wikipedia, Goteo, which is a crowdfunding platform, Fairmondo, that is a kind of eBay, a platform for buying and selling ethical products, or SmartBee, which is a platform cooperative between freelance in the cultural sectors. These are very different from something like Airbnb or Uber because of the governance model, because of the technology. These ones are based on free and open source software projects, open data, in contrast to extractionist kind of proprietary kind of policies, and also because the value that they generate and the type of impact. And still, this is the type of analysis that has been doing from the commons theory, or from the democratization of economy theory, or from the social economy theory. But there is a lack of integrating an analysis from the economist, feminist economy perspective. And this is like the point I want to introduce. And here is the type of questions that I will introduce from a feminist economy perspective, and how Monica very well has presented this tradition. What questions emerge from the platform economy from a feminist perspective, no? And I am answering them not just myself, but also on the basis of reviewing the literature about what we know and what evidence there is about them. So the first question I would ask from a feminist perspective into the platform economy would be, does it reposition or reconfigure the equilibrium between production and reproduction economy? That's something that Monica has referred a lot. How far the conciliation between reproduction and production is being transformed with the digital platforms? It favor a better equilibrium or not? So on the basis of the current research and evidence, the corporate model, the Uber and Airbnb kind of model, in contrast to the Wikipedia kind of model or the platform cooperativist model. So the evidence says that no, like actually the extractionist model of platform economy is reinforcing the gender distribution in the reproduction work. There is the work of Singer that point about how far the platform, digital platform, the element that is not in a physical place, that is external, like in the fabric, but it can be developed from the house. It's a way. It's becoming a way of maintaining the woman in the house space and in the private space, and maintaining women in positions of precarity. So only having like sporadic work in the platforms and not having like full-time works or works with proper labor rights. Actually, there is not only regarding to how the platform economy is reconfiguring the gender in the reproduction work, but there is also another phenomenon which has to do with that the platform economy is favoring that the dynamics of abuse of the production system over the reproduction work, and mainly the work of women, this has been expanded into the social sphere. So now our social interactions in platforms is becoming not only a way of developing friendship or interacting with others, it's becoming a source of profitability and profit. So there is not only the private space of the homes and the house as a space in which we've been working to the market, all our life is becoming working for profitability. Because they extract the data and they use our data in order to develop benefits and not reinforcing into who has generated. The pro-commons modalities, it's similar. I mean, also the pro-commons modalities, the more democratic models of digital platform also reinforce this kind of dynamics, even if value more the social sphere. Second question I will ask to the digital platforms from a feminist perspective is, does it reformulate our conception of value? What is being considered valuable? Does it reformulate the GDP as main reference of the economical growth? Does it reconfigure the position of priorities of the economical system being life in the middle, being the citizens' necessities in the middle? Does it is doing this? So the extractionist model would say no. Exchange value, monetary value, continue to be the main central axis of value system. It also emerged another type of value, not only the exchange value through interaction through monetary, but also the reputational value. Like how much you have followers, how much you have a reputation online has become another source of value on the digital sphere. The pro-commons model, or the more democratic model of digital platforms, is different from this perspective. So what we found is that there is, on the basis of a European project called it peer-to-peer value, in which we did an analysis of the conception of value in a sample of 300 cases of commons-oriented platforms, it emerged other conceptions of value. It emerged the conception of value not only of exchange, but also of use. How far the platforms are around the resolving specific needs that should be, or produce resources that are being used. How far, coming back to the example of Wikipedia, how far Wikipedia is developing a resource that is being used in the educational system, for example, no? Or how far they are producing resources that are used. And this element of putting more value into use and not on exchange, it allows to put in the center resolving necessities instead of just creating profitability. There is another element of this mission-oriented kind of values and the element of platforms that are around the resolving specific needs. Fourth question, because feminist, as also my previous, Monica has pointed, and also Sonia, feminist is not only about women. No, it's about all sources of diversity, and it's about equality. And equality also from a social perspective, also from a social background and a class perspective. So my question here would be, does the digital platform transformation is facilitating that the economical system become more egalitarian from a social perspective? And the extractionist model, no. According to the work of Boyd, which actually was here last year, presenting in the Congress, there is a tendency of segregation between platforms depending on social class and also depending on level of education. So certain platforms and certain roles in platforms, those who buy the services in contraposition to who provide the service, segregate over social dynamics. There is also another element that was developed by Juliet Score, another scholar from the Boston University, in which is saying that actually the incorporation of digital platforms in the labor sphere is favoring that low-income workers stop having stable working conditions and to have a more precarious working conditions, while the stable working conditions of low-income workers is being replicated by precarious work for middle class. This is the example of Uber. If previously Uber taxi drivers were low-income workers or low-education workers, but still they have a stable working condition, now this has been transformed by occasional work by middle-class students or by middle-class profiles. So we are excluding low-income workers from good working conditions. Regarding the pro-commons model, yes, in the sense of there is a greater control of means of production when the platform is a cooperative, when the platform is based on free and open software projects and open data, who are using the platform and who is generating value in the platform has a more control over the means of production. There is a less alienation of the work as far as you connect with the mission of the platform. There is a more fair distribution of the value generated because of the governance of the models are more democratic. And there is also a condition of access of the services and the goods that tend to be favoring open access. So in somehow it's a model of public economy provision, no? Last question. Which might be the more evident for someone not very connected with feminist economy, but actually is not the central one, but still is important. The platform economy transformation, it's more inclusive with women, particularly. So on the literature say that regarding the extractionist model, there is less inclusive of women than traditional fabric model. There is still, again, segregation by gender, according to the work of SCORE, by roles. There is also an increase of gender identity impact into the work relationship, because in the digital sphere we use more the pictures and certain forms of identification with gender is being reinforced. But even if it's less inclusive with women, the extractionist model is more inclusive than the commons model. So somehow the commons model or the corporate platform cooperative model has a lot to do, work to do regarding inclusion of women. It's more democratic in certain sense, but not from an inclusive perspective. There is as part of the program of the stand, there is several sessions that are going to tackle this problematic around only in the case of Wikipedia, there is only 13% of women contributing in the free and open source software projects. There is around 2% of women contributing, while in proprietary software there is 30%. Depending on the country and the sector, this might differ, but that's data that we have to do something with it. So Procommons model does not include women as it would expect, but they still provide better conditions for not on the production side, but on the consumption side. So it facilitates the access of resources because it favors more open access type of modality, which is something also to consider. So these would be my questions that I would add to the platform economy from a feminist perspective, connecting with the previous interventions on the principles of feminist economy. And these are my questions to you now, in the sense of let's debate about it, and during these 3 days, let's do something about it, like define actions for moving forward. Thank you.
We still have some time, so I think we opened the debate, the dialogue with you. I don't know if you have the same impression as me, but I was a little bit disappointed about how this second model, the pro-commons, the corporation model, is not achieving equality and is not offering all the potential, the possibilities for women, and also to create a more, I mean, it's based on social values, right? So what is going on? What is happening? Why we cannot see some improvement regarding the situation of women, and also the main debate in feminist economic, like, for example, the overcome the dichotomies of production and reproduction, private, public, women, men, because all these dichotomies are sources of inequality. So I know it's a difficult question, but regarding your opinion, what do you think what's happening? And for Sonia, do you think that how can we, through politics and to promote like more inclusive this inclusion for women in this kind of economics?
I think it's a very complex problematic, but each time it becomes more evident that there is a trade-off between inclusion and openness. Like if you open systems, like if you opening the production through a digital platform, you have the risk of reproducing inequalities in society, but not only reproducing, but reinforce them. So you have to think about which are the conditions for a democratic effect of openness. Otherwise, you might be excluding those women, but those also who doesn't have the resources, cognitive resources, time, all kind of resources of participation. So I think here the role of institutions to assure like everyone has the resources to contribute in these more dynamic open modalities of production, it's central, and there is a lot of work to do.
Yeah, sure. So what work to do?
I was also amazed seeing the third model, the cooperative model, that it's still reproducing lots of inequalities, and so patriarchy still exists, and we have to be all the time rethinking and reviewing all the work that we are doing, assessing it all the time from a gender and an intersectional gender perspective. And sometimes we might expect boomerang effects, so that's why it's good to evaluate constantly our work to try to overcome this dichotomy which is present. I might also try to suggest to the value thing is essential, like to all the time also to review the value. What are we giving value and which type of value we're giving to anything, to any human activity, I would say, and to try to overcome this dichotomy which is mainly placed on the reproductive and the productive. That means somehow the employment and the domestic and care work, to try to overcome that dichotomy. I might suggest to take it either as a trial and think about other human activities that should contribute, that are contributing to the sustainability of life, as for example the political. I'm not talking about the political paid activities, but the community activities, the social activities that are holding, that are maintaining our life somehow. So to try to put that also in the picture, not just think about employment, care and domestic, but also political, voluntary work, social work, community work, that on one hand, and then to try to think also to do public policies. I'm all the time thinking about like to bring that to the arena of the policies, of the political, of what the public administration, of what the state must do or can do, is to think in terms of the reorganization of time and work. Like work taken as a whole, not just think about employment, but work as a whole and the reorganization of time and work. That's why in the City Council of Barcelona, we have special measures on employment, but we also have a special plan which is also quite innovative on the democratization of care and care work. Because this man that you were talking about, that is a man without needs, doesn't exist. Everybody needs care at some point of its life, at some stage of its life. And care has to be a responsibility, not only it's a woman's responsibility right now mainly, but it has to be also a male responsibility, and of course it has to be also a state responsibility and an enterprise responsibility. So I would say that.
Yeah. Mayo, I don't know if you want to add something about it. If there's any question, we have some time. You want it?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Delphine. I want to share a reflection about how do we change this situation. And I think that maybe we need some time and some laboratory to think how we can do something different. I take some example. I'm working now in a project of economy in Sagrada Familia area. And yesterday we were thinking about how to design the journey, the participant journey for the neighborhood, to participate and think about actions and involve people. And we spent like 2 hours thinking about, okay, we need to be effective and we need to design the journey, to think with little group and do some action, and then we gather. It was like, we don't want this. It's not current, but we work with the background we have. It's like very productive background, so we need to be efficient, we need to have very concrete action, and like, we go fast. And I think we just need to have maybe some resources, public resources, to have time to think about other way to involve people in economic cares, and in doing different action, thinking, because like we have our background. We have very good value in the mind, but our background is what we have. So we need to gather and have time to share, and then public resources are very important because they can impulse this kind of spaces. I know.
Thank you. Is there any other question in the public? Good.
Hi, my name is Kiriaki, and I wanted to ask if you can kind of pinpoint some things that make you feel quite optimistic about the future. I'm not going to ask about pessimistic because I think we know that, but some kind of elements of kind of future hope and optimism.
Thank you. Who wants to answer?
I will be 1 hour talking, but yeah, I think. Well, we are in the middle of the fourth wave of feminists globally, and you can see that, as Sonia has said, in the government of Barcelona City Council, for the first time there is equality on the gender, on the ¿cómo se dice? Parity representation. So at level of data on gender inclusion, but what I notice also from my daily life is that each time our generation, or feminist generation, is rising the intolerance to sexism and to misogyny. So things in which previously we were just saying, okay, if someone treated me badly, if someone told me like I am, or does not recognize my work like permanently in my workspace, I would say, okay, these things are okay. Like, you know, it happens. Now we talk between us, we create solidarity, sorority, and we denounce, you know? And it's time more women are saying, no, things that previously we have to accept, now we don't accept them, you know? And so you can notice that in many kind of small things. So it's not a big revolution in terms of big mobilizations about the data, which is positive, but also in the small of the interaction. I think the celebration of this stand, it's also a very positive thing. I mean, the slogan of the stand is about inclusive and sustainable platforms for cities and global goals. 40% of the program involve gender and feminist issues. All the program has equality in their interventions. So, yeah.
Yes, I agree. The future generations, the current feminist movement, women's movement, and also when you go to the demonstrations nowadays, it's also full of men who are aware of this. So it's going to take a lot of effort. We still have to put a lot of energies and time. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to take many years, but it's going to happen.
And yes, I think we must be positive. There's no plan B. This is the plan. We need to become feminist, and for as Mayo said, we are here. We are present. We are where the knowledge is created. We are where decisions are made, and we are where the action is deployed. So we have to be everywhere, and that will take some time. But I think it's a matter of time, because it's a huge transformation. As someone said, it's a transformation in our minds. It's not just the economic, the legal system, how we work in, how cities are organized. It involves absolutely everything. So probably it's one of the bigger the societal challenges that we have to achieve equality, and also to put what the feminist says, daily life of people in the center. Because we live for the world, but everything should be around us to provide us a well-being, no? So yeah, there's another question?
To you, I don't remember your name, but just for you. Delphine, ask for a subsidy to the city council. You'll have to show that your project has a gender perspective and that your organization is working from this perspective too. But if you need resources, go ahead. It's going to be in January. So you can start thinking about the project that you want to get financed to.
Okay, so I think we can finish the session. Thank you again for being here, and just let's be positive and keep working.